Hello everybody, Min-Max Munchkin back with another video. Before I begin with my never-ending ramblings about the plethora of mechanics introduced by the class variants Unearthed Arcana, I would like to invite you to my weekly online homebrew campaign. There is a 25% discount throughout the entirety of December 2019, so plenty of time to hop in if you are starved for some high-powered D&D. If the name Melendor Chronicles: The Undoing of Oderon sounds interesting to you, sign up for the waitlist using the form you can see on your screen right now. You can find the link to this form in the description below this video. The main purpose of the waitlist is to help me organize everything more smoothly and align everybody's schedules easier. In the description you will also find a few YouTube links providing more details about the campaign and my homebrew world and setting, as well as a few highlights from the sessions I DM'd back in July of 2019. I will start uploading more campaign highlights from my ongoing Sunday group again, so you can expect plenty more soft spoilers and sneak peeks here and there every few days for the next couple of weeks. Now, as I usually start most of my videos, the Patreon shoutouts, so Mike, Matthew, Ewing, Hocken, BardlyManHardlyTrying, Rogor, Kaleron, Suburban Hell, Albert Quack, Aidan Harth, Gary Course, Brad Oldham, Sinas, Joel C Alcazar, Brad Vinya Boy Fox, Bryan Moten, Sean, Mannozzi Stefano, Claire De Cohen, Nathan James, Primal Bass, Booze, Bitten By, Gaston Ramirez, Jeremy Siroy, Inácio Neto, Maligaant Menuk, Anthony Du, Devin Jache, and Lunatic Dragon. Thank you all new and old patrons for your continued support. I probably butchered half of your names. I do apologize, but I'm only a human and I only speak a couple of languages. If you are still listening to me, watching this video, and you haven't skipped towards whatever point of the video where the actual UA overview begins, and you would like to see your name on this list, there is always an option to chuck a buck my way on my Patreon page, which is also going to be linked down below in the description, as I usually do on all of my videos. There are perks that come with these tiers, specifically magical tiers. Magical Secrets allows you to download all of my PDFs and Word files. Basically scripts that I use for all of my build videos, class overview videos, and all of that stuff. As you can see, all of my videos are already uploaded there, so you can just, once you pledge, you can unlock them if you are in the Magical Secrets or higher tier. With all of that said, let's quickly jump into the meat of this video, which is probably going to last 69,000,000 years, I don't know, because there's like so many pages in this Unearthed Arcana document, and so little time for me to go through all of them. I thought about splitting this video into two parts, but I don't know how to do it smoothly enough and elegantly enough, so ultimately I just decided whatever happens, happens, and this video is probably going to be 4 hours long. But hey, a lot of you actually like my overly long videos and ramblings, so let's begin this weird journey and adventure of me talking forever and ever about all sorts of different scenarios and theoretical situations and mechanics and whatnot, right? So basically, about a month ago, back in November 4th, 5th, I don't really know, Wizards of the Coast released this Unearthed Arcana that introduced a lot of alternatives and enhancements for the existing class features. The general theme and direction seems to be geared towards versatility and flexibility. I mean, it's even in the names of a lot of these features, with spellcasters gaining access to a range of spells found on other classes' spell lists. So, first thing that we can see in this document is the Proficiency Versatility, which has been added to all classes, and it sort of enhances the ability score improvement, which is present on all classes' feature lists. So, whatever class that you're playing, sooner or later you're gonna get these ability score improvements, and this thing would definitely improve upon those, definitely make them more versatile. Being able to swap one of your skill proficiencies when gaining ability score increases means you will still have to wait a bit before being able to do so, but it will probably be enough to fix any mistakes you made at level 1 or at some point during your character progression, as well as allow your character to adapt to the campaign setting or your party composition, and obviously all of your other party members' skill proficiencies. So I don't think it's particularly OP, I don't think it's useless, it's just middle of the ground. It's probably gonna get used here and there if your DM allows the use of these Unearthed Arcanas, and down the road if this feature becomes official. Next we have the Barbarian, which gains Survival Instincts, which replaces Danger Sense. So basically, Danger Sense is this nifty little feature that gives you advantage on dex saves against anything that you can perceive, and that forces you to make a dex save. I think advantage on these dex saves is still much better than 2 skill expertises that you get with Survival Instincts, but it might make some sense to take the Survival Instincts instead of Danger Sense, again if your DM allows Unearthed Arcana, in more exploration-oriented campaigns, but there's usually somebody in the party equally or better equipped to deal with those scenarios, so I don't see very many barbarians opting to take this instead of Danger Sense, at least that's my opinion. I would personally always take Danger Sense over this, even though perception is... expertise and perception is hard to pass, but yeah, I mean, Danger Sense is just mechanically so great, especially on lower levels and throughout the entirety of the game. Instinctive Pounce, 5th level feature that replaces fast movement, is kind of... okay, so fast movement is still more reliable for getting into melee reach with enemies, because if you use your movement and then your action to dash, that's still 20 feet of extra movement that you can have starting from level 5. Instinctive Pounce might be situationally more beneficial, most likely in tight corridors and smaller dungeons when the enemy just finishes the movement speed, and then you get right next to the enemy using your reaction, and then if the enemy decides to move away, using some legendary action or whatever type of thing that the enemy might have at its or his or her whatever disposal. Yeah, sure, Instinctive Pounce is better in those situations. Honestly, I would pretty much take fast movement as well over Instinctive Pounce, similar to how I would take Danger Sense over Survival Instincts. That said, both of these variants, which replace the stock official features, I mean, they're okay. I'm not saying they're bad, it's just that I personally think the fast movement and Danger Sense is just more reliable, more consistent. For bards, well, there's this list which is for some reason listed after Barbarian and all I don't know, maybe it's alphabetical ordering because all classes A, B, then C, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but it's what the document literally has on page number 2. So whatever. But yeah, bards is... Okay, so bard is, as a class as a whole, is pretty solid. I think it's even like... I often hate on bards because they are... In my opinion, they are 4 out of 5, at least 3.5 out of 5 in way too many things. So, I don't think bards are exceptionally good at any particular aspect of the game, but so they are not really specialists. I mean, one of their features is called a jack of all trades, so they are designed with the intent of not being really especially awesomely good at anything, but in my opinion, playing an 18th level bard, they're just too good at way too many things. That said, there is okay, so there is a reason why there is a generalist class like a bard in the game. It's pretty much the generalist class of the game. It can heal, deal damage, support, it has utility, support, all sorts of things. But that said, there are a couple of things that bard can definitely benefit from, so even though the fact that a lot of bards, well, all bards sooner or later gain magical secrets, expanded list of core class spells makes the whole class even more versatile and definitely less dependent on said magical secrets. Notable additions of spells are Aid, which is inherently better on full casters like Bard than any half caster like, I don't know. Well, it's a Cleric and Paladin spell as it's currently in the game, and even an Artificer spell, another half caster. But seeing it on another full caster's list is definitely a welcome addition. It would make bards more useful as a support, as a lower level support, right? Mirror Image is, it definitely will make bards tankier, harder to hit. Mass Healing Word expands bards' healing capabilities even more. I think Rary's Telepathic Bond is an awesome secret communication tool, channel that you can use to give your party an edge in negotiations and other social circumstances, as well as keep tabs on each other in various situations where, I don't know, you might be compromised, or somebody has been abducted, or you lost, the party got split, or who knows what, right? Now, thematically, Hero's Feast, in my opinion, I mean, it's not an awesome spell, and I'm intentionally skipping some of these spells because this video would last way too long. But specifically, Hero's Feast, I think, was supposed to be a bard spell from the get-go, if you know what I mean, because what other class is supposed to really do something like this, right? Bring forth a great feast, including magnificent food and drink. I mean, bards are literally performers. They are the party face oftentimes, so this being only a Cleric and Druid spell was sort of always a little bit weird to me when I thought about bards, and this definitely fixes that sort of. I'm not gonna say it's an issue, but maybe an oversight, something that kind of slipped through the cracks in that regard. Now, one spell that I would specifically like to point out is Maze. I think it's amazing spell, no pun intended. It's such a good spell that I really see it as a must take for any 18th level bard currently in the game. 18th level bard gain another set of magical secrets, which allow you to take to learn spells outside of the class. And Maze is one of those spells that I really think that, like, yeah, sure, you can use these magical secrets to learn 2 level 9 spells, but I don't think there's very many things as powerful as Maze in the game, even though it's a lower level spell. It's not a highest level spell, right? And any 17th level bard using this Unearthed Arcana document can now learn this spell, leaving all 18th level bards even more wiggle room in terms of learning spells from other classes, and ultimately not wasting one of your magical secret slots on this spell. Even though I think, even without this Unearthed Arcana, magical secrets, getting Maze, and just like using it once in your lifetime is just goddamn superb. Because if you don't know about this spell, there's no save against it. The target immediately gets shunted into this labyrinth, whatever, demiplane. And if the target wants to leave the labyrinthine demiplane, the target has to make an action, has to use an action, and then make a DC 20 intelligence check. Now, intelligence check is something that pretty much nothing in the game is proficient with. Some classes, like bards in particular, and maybe abjuration wizards, can add half of their proficiency bonus to some of their intelligence checks with casting spells like counterspell and dispel magic, but no monster, no character in the game is proficient with raw, just simple, like, direct ability checks like an intelligence check. So even if the monster is proficient in intelligence saves, that bonus is not gonna get applied to the intelligence check. Intelligence check is just what the monster has from its own raw ability, intelligence ability score. And from my experience, I used this spell on Tarask, and at the time I didn't even know it was a Tarask. The DM just decided to reskin the monster, make slight modifications, and I kind of knew that it was a Tarask, but I wasn't exactly 100% sure. And then after, you know, I used Maze, and then he started making intelligence checks in the open, I was like, okay, well, this definitely looks like a Trask based on the intelligence, because I just know the intelligence score of the Trask by heart, because I oftentimes look at it, and it was good. Like it felt really good. It allowed the party to heal up to full hit points. I saved 2 party members from being, they were already swallowed and taking acid damage inside of the Trask's body. So I mean, this spell is nuts. I'm just gonna end it there, not gonna talk about it anymore. Prismatic Wall is potentially one of the most destructive spells in the game. It does require some setup, because it's not just plug and play. But once it goes, the amount of damage it can deal, the conditions it can inflict, it's super potent. And I think this spell being on the Bard's list is definitely gonna make Bards more viable in the absence of wizards and, let's say, well, definitely wizard. This is a wizard-only spell, and I don't necessarily think it should be a wizard-only spell, based on the amount of power that it's possible to squeeze out of it, especially when you cooperate with your other party members. But yeah, that's it for the spells. Magical Inspiration, once they hit level 3, most bards gain these specific features that use their bardic inspiration, which is a core class feature. Let's say Glamour Bard, I mean, he gains this Mantle of Inspiration, which allows it to, you know, grant yourself a wondrous appearance. And then what usually happens is that the core class feature, the bardic inspiration, doesn't really get used in the way it's described at level 1. It most often gets used in a way that's described as a level 3 feature, right? All bards pretty much have this. This enhancement doesn't really offer a superior improvement, something that you would always pick over your level 3 features. I mean, that would kind of defeat the purpose of subclasses of bard colleges, but it does definitely offers more flexibility and options when given to your allies, because I still see bardic inspiration more often used with these level 3 features that you gain from your college. But this definitely broadens the specter of things that you can use bardic inspiration, that your party members can use bardic inspiration once you give it to them. It's not only attack rolls, and I think I don't even know. Like I so rarely see bardic inspiration used in its pure level 1 form. I do know that it's ability checks. But yeah, so fails is lost, ability check, attack roll, yeah, so three things, right? And then with this thing, if the creature has a bardic inspiration die, it can add the number roll to 1 damage or healing roll of the spell. Now, again, this definitely doesn't feel that overpowered. At lower levels it might be relevant, especially if you roll high, but at higher levels it's not gonna scale that well. Still, as a level 1 enhancement, it's definitely offering more flexibility in that regard. And oftentimes, you know, you do need more healing, especially if you heal a barbarian, or maybe you need more damage if you really need to bring a monster down, or if you land a critical hit and that bardic inspiration die would pretty much, you would roll 2 dice instead of 1. So yeah, I mean, this is really good, I think. I mean, it's, again, not gonna get used all the time, I think, even if your DM allows you to use this, but it's definitely very flexible. Spell Versatility, this feature will make it much easier for new players to pick up and play a spellcasting class such as a bard. For older players, something like this will actually allow them to try out other spells the class has to offer, instead of always going for the best ones, right? You being able to swap spells whenever you finish a long rest definitely gives you more wiggle room in terms of what spells you can have learned for the day. Even though you can only swap 1 spell a day, you can really kind of adjust your spell list on the go as the campaign progresses. Maybe you get into the portion of the campaign that has more intrigue, political games, social encounters, less combat encounters, and then you gradually adjust your spell list from the purely combat-oriented that it was for the first stretch of the campaign. Maybe your DM only dropped like combat encounters after combat encounters, and then after that you just gradually switch your list into something more fitting the circumstances that your party and you are currently in. Cantrips are spells, so, you know, they don't use spell slots, but this feature I don't think it specifically states that it has to be a level 1 spell or above, so cantrips definitely can be, you know, when a feature applies to spells, that feature applies to cantrips as well, so, you know, that it is what it is, right? So, yeah, basically that's it. Anyway, Cleric, cantrip versatility, so they only gain cantrip versatility versus the spell versatility means... I mean, it makes sense, right? Cantrip clerics and all classes that prepare spells based on their list of spells, total, like, entire list of spells, there's no point being able to switch spells at a long rest when they can already do it anyway. So cantrip versatility does give them more flexibility in terms of the choices of cantrips. And with the recent official release of Artificer, allowing players to... There's official precedent, right? Because the Artificer class, which is now the official class of the game, 13th class, does allow you to swap out your cantrips using the spellcasting feature. Now I am going to scroll a little bit through this. Blah 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 blah. Now I am there we go. So when you gain a level, you can replace one. So there is already a precedent, official precedent. So I think something like this may easily see the light of day in some of the future official book that gets released next year or maybe in 2021. Who knows? But yeah, that's it. Cleric Spells, I would say, despite this being a playtest and a lot of this stuff might get nerfed, is, you know, when it gets released officially, the additions to the Cleric's list of spells are quite powerful. So, basically just skimming through this list, you can see that there aren't that many spells, but the few spells that got added are quite potent for the fact that clerics are full casters. And what do I mean by that? A lot of these spells are actually paladin spells. So paladins being half casters means that they get second level spells at level 5 and then third level spells at level 9. Well, clerics get second level spells at level 3 and then third level spells at level 5, and then as you keep leveling up you get higher level spells faster and faster compared to half casters, which is why half casters only get up to 5th level spells. Notable additions are Wrathful Smite, which is one of the better smite spells, because a little bit of psychic damage is not gonna make or break the game, but the fact that you inflict a frightened condition, which, if you didn't know, frightened condition pretty much means that a creature has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls, means that on subsequent turns the creature has to spend its action and make a wisdom check. So wisdom check is an ability check, right? And frightened condition pretty much imposes disadvantage on all ability checks. So that means that not only the creature has to spend an action, meaning that the creature doesn't attack you, try to grapple you, I don't know, do something else with the action. It has to specifically address the spell affecting it, and then the frightened condition is pretty nasty to deal with. Disadvantage on attack rolls is something that on lower levels is a very nice debuff. So yeah, I mean, the initial wisdom saving throw, the creature might pass it, but if it doesn't pass, you're still gonna deal a little bit of extra damage, not as much as the Divine Smite, but relevant, right? And then on top of that, if the creature fails, frightened condition pretty much buffs itself because disadvantage on wisdom check, and on top of that, the creature having to make an action. This is really good spell. Aura of Vitality is another absolutely, I think, nuts spell on the Cleric's list of spells. Because, well, I mean, Paladins get it at level 9, you get it at level 5. So, you know, level 5 to level 9, bonus action 2d6 healing, 30 feet radius. This is on Clerics or any other full caster. This is, I'm not gonna say broken because it's definitely not. I mean, level 6 bards can do this, I mean, right? So it's not really the first time we see something like this, but allowing something like this into your game is definitely gonna make a lot of monsters much less powerful, because if you don't target that cleric is gonna keep concentrating on this spell and then just dish out 2d6 healing every turn. On level 5, 2d6 healing is actually quite relevant, and if you roll, even if you roll lower, you're still gonna do a lot of healing in that 1 minute. So yeah, for combat this is quite potent. Aura of Purity is another spell that, I mean, it's another Paladin spell, right? And I think it's quite potent on Clerics because, again, Clerics get it at level 7, while Paladins get it at level 13. So there's a 6 levels of difference between Paladins and Clerics getting access to this spell. And practically, this spell addresses all the most common annoying conditions that PCs, you yourself playing the game, have to often deal with. And getting this at level 7 when some of these conditions might legit start getting more and more common, when, you know, your DM challenging you by frightening, paralyzing, poisoning, stunning, even charming, right? Depending on what the DM chooses to do to you. Yeah, I mean, this spell is gonna make Clerics much more potent as a support class, not gonna lie. And obviously, Power Word Heal as a level 9 spell. I'm kind of baffled that this wasn't a Cleric spell to begin with. I don't know why this was a... I mean, okay, Bard spell, it makes sense. Bards sing songs and they are performers, so Power Word, I mean, sure. But Clerics healing, Power Word Heal, doesn't that work? Yeah, I mean, it should have been on the Cleric list from the get-go. And in my opinion, this only fixes the mistake. In terms of Channel Divinities, they get this interesting enhancement, which basically gives all Clerics a third Channel Divinity option. And if you remember, all Clerics at level 6 gain 2 uses of Channel Divinity, and then at level 18 they gain a third use. But pretty much from level 2 to level 6, you know, basically from level 6, having 2 of these uses and then 3 options to choose from definitely allows for many more combinations in terms of spells, other classes, other party members, what they do, how you can help them, and all of that stuff. And, you know, considering all of that stuff, this definitely provides a lot more spellcasting longevity, because just gaining a couple more level 1 slots, it might seem trivial at first, but oftentimes, especially when the DM chooses to challenge your party very, very hard, you do need every level slot, even first level slots. So just being able to get them brings Clerics somewhat closer to, let's say, I don't know, Wizards, who can gain a couple of slots back using every short rest, using Arcane Recovery. But with Channel Divinities, you would obviously be able to kind of emulate at least a little bit of that. Blessed Strikes now. This feature basically merges Potent Spellcasting and Divine Strike into one. It says it replaces, but it basically takes a little bit of one and a little bit of the other one and then fuses it into the same feature. I don't know how else to explain it. Radiant damage might be legitimately a better source of damage in most cases, because some of these Cleric subclasses, for example, I think War Cleric off the top of my mind, they don't deal any specific type of damage, it's just a weapon damage. Let me just see. So yeah, you can cause a weapon attack to deal 1d8. So if the weapon is not magical, you just deal 1d8 extra non-magic damage. That's kind of at level 8, a lot of monsters are it's kind of common at level 8 to have monsters that are resistant to non-magic damage. So if you don't have the magic weapon or whatever, it's kind of you know, tricky. And in that sense, this feature might be better in terms of the type of damage, but the problem I have with this feature, it's kind of like in the middle of the both features, right? It takes a little bit of one, a little bit of the other one, and then kind of merges them into one. Divine Strike scales, right? At level 14, it's not a lot of damage, but at least there's a little bit of scaling, so it kind of works in that way. And then on the other hand, Potent Spellcasting. Okay, so Arcana Cleric definitely has Potent Spellcasting, a couple other have that as well. It pretty much gives Cleric's Wisdom modifier to their cantrips, like increases their cantrip damage by adding their Wisdom modifier. So Potent Spellcasting doesn't really scale as much outside of increasing your Wisdom modifier, but at least it's consistent, right? You're always going to have that +3 or +5 to damage. And with Divine Strike at level 14, you are going to roll 2d8, so you are more guaranteed to roll at least average damage. With Blessed Strikes, only 1d8 from level 8 up to level 20, you are definitely going to deal... You're going to be less swingy, so you're going to be more swingy compared to potent spellcasting. You might roll 1, you might roll 8, but on a low sample case scenarios like the D&D 5th edition combat is, this definitely gonna affect your round-to-round damage output. And I'm the proponent of specialization instead of versatility, even though I definitely think that versatility has the place in the game. And you are more flexible and adaptable based on this feature, and changing combat circumstances, but the damage is just too negligible to matter in most cases. So I really struggle to see the point personally. If you're gonna play cleric that focuses on cantrips, you're gonna pretty much love potent spellcasting more than blessed strikes. I mean, it's a consistent damage increase. Blessed strikes, sure, you might, maybe if you have the attack. I mean, are there any cleric cantrips that have attack rolls? I don't think so, right? I legit forgot. So let me just see. No, I don't think so. Sacred Flame, Word of Radiance, it's all saving throws. So you would pretty much, I mean, you wouldn't be able to even, right? I mean, creature takes damage, one of your spells. Sure, you might multi-class, and then you have the attack roll cantrip, right? Spell attack, and then if you crit, maybe to, I don't know. It's just kind of mediocre, in my opinion, right? So that's it for that. Druids, cantrip versatility, same story as clerics. Maybe even more useful on druids, because, well, druids do have more cantrips. And in that regard, more cantrips, more versatility, right? Droid spells, there are a couple of additions, notable ones. Primarily protection from evil and good. Now, if you ever watched any of my videos before, I so love this spell. Because it's so potent against so many types of creatures in the game for only being a first level spell. And lasting up to 10 minutes. And, you know, it really makes sense for the class, both thematically and mechanically. That's just, you know, my opinion. Augury should have been on the list of druid spells from the very beginning. I mean, druids do have this little bit of a shamanic vibe. I mean, yeah, there is a difference between a druid and a shaman, but there is no official shaman class in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So you can oftentimes kind of reskin a lot of druid spells and features in a more shamanistic way, right? And Augury is definitely one of those spells that kind of fits the theme of a more shamanistically oriented character. I don't know how else to say it other than that, right? Aura of Vitality, I mean, do I even need to talk about this spell again? I don't think so. Revivify, another cleric spell that's been added to Druid's list, so you're no longer kind of relegated into the second fiddle revive caster, because if you don't know, Druids don't really have Raise Dead spell, right? Clerics do, but Raise Dead is not a Druid spell. So what Druids have instead is the Reincarnation, and Reincarnation is Reincarnate, whatever. It's this really kind of weird spell where, yeah, sure, you revive a character, but then that character is pretty much almost guaranteed to be a different race than it was before. So it's kind of funny, and it happened in my own home campaign. One of the players died, and then I've had the NPC druid revive him, and then he turned from a turtle into a... I think he was a halfling, and I used an extended list of races, because this is pretty much a stock list of races. There are obviously Goliaths, lizard folk, and all the other races that have been released subsequently after this spell was released back in 2014. Anyway, it's kind of weird, right? With Revivify, you definitely have this more viable support role, even in the absence of clerics and paladins. Now, Cone of Cold, Immolation, and Incendiary Cloud are all kind of damage spells. I'm not gonna go into which one is better, because, I mean, every damage spell has at least a little bit of power and efficiency in the game. And you know, it does offer quite a bit more damage output at higher levels. AoE damage, single target, whatever. It's ultimately kind of nonsensical to me that Mass Polymorph wasn't a druid spell, considering all the wild shapes and all the kind of shape-shifting vibe that druids do come with, and then Mass Polymorph not being on the list of spells that they can prepare is always been kind of weird to me, so I don't know why it wasn't included from the get-go, and I hope to see this mistake corrected in the future official release. Again, it's not really a mistake, and I don't particularly consider this spell exactly super good or something, but just from the thematic standpoint, this spell definitely should be on the druid's list. Now, Wild Companion, an enhancement to Wild Shape, is another thing that goes kind of hand in hand what I just talked about. Find Familiar not being a druid spell is another thing that really baffles me, because even the official PHB art, like if you just type druid 5e, it's like the first picture that pops up. It has the druid literally, right, depicted with a bird of prey. I think this might be some kind of hawk or whatever. It's a bird of prey, right? Eagle, whatever, clutching his hand, right? So with this enhancement, it definitely requires the expand of one wild shape charge to use it. So I don't think making this, buffing the duration of this feature up to a full druid level instead of a half of your druid level would make the feature necessarily overpowered, because sure, you don't need material components, but let's be honest, like the spell requires 10 gold pieces worth of some materials, right? So even in most cases, even level 1 wizards can afford to cast this spell, right? And then, you know, after your first adventure where you get maybe 50 to 100 gold pieces, you're pretty much, you don't really even care about the material components for this spell, other than maybe your DM not giving you any gold for like 15 sessions in a row, which actually happened in my experience quite a lot of time. And Luca Palaz, if you're listening to this, yeah bro, screw you. Anyway, that's it for druids. Fighters. All the feature variants for fighters definitely revolve around one particular martial archetype subclass, Battlemaster. Whether that's just coincidental or means Wizards of the Coast is considering giving all fighters some of the Battlemaster maneuvers and superiority dice remains to be seen, right? So basically, a lot of people are kind of the opinion that fighter subclass called Battlemaster should really be like a lot of the features that Battlemaster as a subclass, like a specific archetype of a fighter comes with, should be really the features that all fighters have to some extent. So this kind of follows that logic, and honestly, I don't really have the solid opinion on this. I do really think that some fighters are really underwhelming. Let me not even get started on Champion, because, you know, even Purple Dragon Knight and Champion are just so mind-bogglingly bad as a single class. Sure, you can multi-class with them and then make some concepts more viable, but on their own, the classes are really underpowered when compared to Cavaliers, Battlemasters, obviously, Eldritch Knights, all the other subclasses currently in the game. So fighting style options definitely revolve around those. Now, Fighter being the first martial class on this list, alphabetically and in all other senses, means that they get access to a couple of these additional fighting options, fighting styles, that have been described at the end of this document, so I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video. But for now, basically, Superior Technique is the special fighting style that only fighters get access to with this Unearthed Arcana. And, you know, with Superior Technique, every fighter basically becomes a pseudo Battlemaster, because you gain one maneuver of your choice, and then on top of that you gain one more superiority die. So maybe if you're playing another version of the fighter, if you're not playing a Battlemaster, and then you take a Martial Adept feat, right, which gives you another maneuver, I think like 2 or 3 maneuvers on top of everything, right, something like that. 2 maneuvers and one of these superiority dice. So basically two superiority dice, 3 maneuvers. You can definitely kind of emulate the Battlemaster just using these optional playtest materials, right? And in that sense, kind of maneuver versatility definitely makes sense, because if you do get access to this Unearthed Arcana, and you take this fighting style, or maybe you're playing a variant human and you take Martial Adept right from the level 1, this feature would definitely apply. Now, it definitely enhances maneuvers, so if you don't have them, it's kind of useless, but we are getting offered these new toys, and I don't think, even if features that we are currently talking about, these ones, versatility and fighting style options, get made official, are going to be necessarily introduced into the game in the current iteration that they've been presented to us. It's just obviously playtest material, and this is the thing that Wizards of the Coast came up with. Obviously, this feature really shines for Battle Masters because they have the most maneuvers, they have the most superiority dice and all of the other stuff. Though it can definitely work for all the other characters that gain Martial Adept or Superior Technique fighting style. It makes the character focusing on these maneuvers much more flexible and versatile, but also calls for more preemptive thinking and careful planning. So, it's not really very good, it's not bad, it's just middle of the road, right? That's just my opinion. Depending on what particular subclass of the fighter you're playing, and that's it. Maneuver options, a lot of these options been added to the list of options that Battlemaster comes with. Now, it kind of goes back to the argument that a lot of Battlemaster features should be core fighter class features. I don't really necessarily agree or disagree with that argument, with that line of thinking, but this definitely kind of feels like Wizards of the Coast is listening to the vocal. Okay, so this is gonna sound bad, but I'm gonna call a vocal minority of people who are affecting a lot of these changes to the game. I don't really belong to that group, not at least yet, but maybe one day, I don't know, so it's just me voicing my opinion on this. Some changes are good, I don't think this one is particularly good or bad, but if something like this gets made official, it's definitely gonna make Battlemaster even more appealing to new players playing fighters, because obviously it's gonna expand the range of options available to fighters using this martial archetype. Now, Ambush would definitely be especially beneficial when paired with Assassin Rogue. For a pure fighter, there are better options, in my opinion. Bait and switch can be used to pull yourself or your ally out of danger, depending on the circumstances. Brace is great because, similarly to Polar Master Feat, it gives fighters a reaction attack when the enemy moves within 5 feet of them. The different wording makes me believe this is any movement, whether the enemy is already within 5 feet of the fighter or the enemy is just moving into the 5 feet of distance away from the fighter. Some maybe further clarification might be necessary if this gets made official, but that's going to be, it remains to be seen. So Restraining Strike is awesome because it's immediately triggered by a successful melee weapon attack, meaning you can do it in between your attack action extra attacks. Let's say level 11 fighter who gets 3 attacks using the attack action, right? At level 11 all fighters get a 3rd attack. So that means after your first attack lands, you can restrain the target, and then after you restrain the target immediately, you gain advantage on your 2 subsequent attacks. The target has disadvantage on its attacks. Yeah, restrained condition, the more I play the game, I usually kind of repeat this sentiment. Restrained condition is really, really potent, and you being able to do it as a fighter instead of relying on your support spellcasters to cast Web or some other spell that maybe, I don't know. What's the name of that other spell? It's not Melf, it's something restraining, I don't know. There are spells that restrain targets. Web is the first one that pops to mind, obviously. So yeah, it's really awesome. And Silver Tongue is probably the best choice for Samurais, because level 7 Samurais get this feature called Elegant Courtier, which pretty much gives them advantage on persuasion checks, and being able to further improve on that possibility on the, stack the bonuses on top of each other is always a good thing to have. Now, obviously, all fighters can benefit from this, because all fighters that have access, all characters that have access to maneuvers, but yeah, I think this would definitely benefit Samurai the most. Snipe. Now, Snipe is interesting because it provides a limited but viable alternative to Crossbow Expert feat. Bonus action attack with any ranged weapon compared to just hand crossbow, right? So Crossbow Expert pretty much gives you a bonus action attack if you are wielding a hand crossbow. So this means even if you are like wielding a longbow or a short bow or a heavy crossbow, regardless, you can use Snipe to gain a bonus action attack, and that's pretty good because it will definitely increase damage. You will get to add the superiority dice on top of the damage ordinary damage roll, and that's all around just good, right? Studious Eye further improves fighters' non-combat capabilities and can be stacked with other features and spells to produce ridiculous ability check bonuses. Now, I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but this definitely opens up some possibilities that otherwise, you know, obviously you wouldn't really be able to do with just ordinary advantages, feats, and all of the other stuff, right? Now, monks are also gaining a couple of other features, namely monk weapons. That's the first one on the list. Now, honestly, I don't see much point of this feature, right? If somebody wants to play a monk that uses weapons, there's already an archetype called Kensei, which allows you to do just that, right? You can pick any weapon pretty much and then make it a monk weapon. So it's already been described. Let's not get too deep into it. So the weapon criteria is a bit confusing and I think overly prohibitive as well. If you want all weapons to gain access to more, all monks to gain access to more weapons. So the proficiency prerequisite means you either must rely on multiclassing, right? Because in order for you to gain the benefit of this enhancement, you must be already proficient with the weapon to be able to use it in this way. And then, you know, there are only a couple of races which give you proficiency with weapons. Dwarves, elves, Githyanki, half-elves variants from Sword Course Adventurer's Guide, and hobgoblins. I don't think there's any other races, official races in the game that give you weapon proficiencies, so if you want to play a character like that, you pretty much have to rely on multiclassing into a fighter or, I don't know, paladin, maybe ranger, who knows. And the weapon trait limitations further prohibit a lot of cool character concepts that people often would like to play. There are a lot of anime lovers, you know, whatever type of anime you're into. You know, there are a lot of characters that are using katanas, whatever, all sorts of weird weapons. And this feature pretty much doesn't allow you to do this, so I don't really see the point. And maybe I'm just not seeing the big picture, but this feature definitely seems borderline useless to me in most cases where people would like to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of what weapons they can use by them being monks. So key field strikes, despite the fact that attack is the most common action that most monks take, which allows them to use their martial arts and flurry of blows, almost all monastic traditions and subclasses come with special action options. Shadow monks, for example, they can cast spells, and open hand monks can heal themselves at level 7, 11, 6, I don't know, yeah, so 6, yeah. Anyway, yeah, a lot of monks, let's not even go into the way of the 4 elements, because that's just, yeah, this is a major fail subclass, but if you want to listen to me shit on this subclass, go and watch my monk class overview video, where I go into a little bit more detail on that. But anyway, yeah, a lot of monks do have a lot of action options that are not actually attack action. That's not really using the attack action, right? So, with that in mind, if you use one of those options, your bonus action often goes unspent. And, you know, whenever you opt to use some of these, this feature would definitely allow you to avoid wasting a turn without using your bonus action during that turn. So some other key features that have been further added to enhance the key feature that we already have in the game are these Distant Eye and Quicken Healing. Now, Distant Eye, I don't see it being used that often, but just in case your additional movement speed, which monks are notorious for, and you know, superb melee attack action options, you can temporarily cancel long range disadvantage if you choose to spend some key points. It's okay, it's not overly expensive, 1 key point, it's fine, I think, but in most cases you're better off just getting into melee and punching, kicking the enemy, or even hitting it with your quarterstaff. Now, Quicken Healing is an example of an action which would be added to all monks if you are using this Unearthed Arcana, which can be used in conjunction with key fueled strikes, and it costs a lot of key points for mediocre healing, but if you have any leftover key points before a short rest, you can definitely just spend them instead of relying on spending your hit dice, so this further optimizes your resource management capabilities, and you definitely get all key points back at the short rest, because key points are a short rest feature. So, you know, 30 minutes during the short rest is pretty much all you need to gain them back. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting, and if your DM allows you to use this, I see a lot of self-healing monks out there. So, if you're playing one of those monks, I mean, it's a second level feature. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if it's actually... I do know that it's expensive and it doesn't really offer a lot of healing. I mean, at level 2, 1d4 healing for 2 key points, you spend the entire pool at level 2 to just heal potentially 1. It's dubiously useful, but I definitely see it useful at higher levels. So, let me know if you're playing one of those. Anyway, switching into the Paladin, we gain another fighting style option, which is specific to Paladins, and obviously all the core ones which have been described at the end of this document. Now, in practice, in actual gameplay optimization, if you are playing a Paladin if you want your Paladin to be effective at what it does, I don't see very many people taking Blessed Warrior instead of some other fighting styles, like defense, great weapon fighting, or whatnot, but something about the Paladin with guidance and thaumaturgy cantrips just seems right in my mind, right? A little bit better mechanical support to fit the theme of a Divine Marshal just getting in, you know, supporting his allies or providing himself with a little bit more certainty and a little bit less improving odds of success through divine sources, channeling divine sources, and obviously thaumaturgy. I mean, you're literally a warrior of gods, divine warrior, holy warrior, so something evokes that feeling of like a, you know, divine paladin. Anyway, that's just, I mean, I do like theme, but mechanically this doesn't really seem that much useful, and sure, you can take Sacred Flame, you know, cleric cantrip that deals just like damage if you want some ranged option, but other than that, I don't really see much use other than that, you know, paladins are melee characters by design, so yeah, I think they're supposed to stay like that until the end of time, or at least until we get a sixth edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, Paladin spells, not a very many spells have been added. Notable additions: Spirit Guardians definitely stands out, even though Paladins would get it 4 levels later than Clerics. Gentle Repose will help in the absence of Clerics, Druids, and other casters that can revive dead mates. Dawn and Flame Strike both do radiant damage, right? So it definitely makes sense from the thematic standpoint. There's more mechanical support for the type of damage you are kind of expecting Paladins to do. Divine Smite is it's that signature feature of Paladins, which deals radiant damage. and a couple more spells that deal radiant damage themselves definitely make thematic sense. But also in terms of mechanics, particularly Flame Strike, it's nice that Paladins also gain a little bit more AoE damage capabilities, so I think this is a good addition. And if this gets made official, I don't think it's gonna necessarily make them more powerful, it's just gonna make them more versatile instead of, oh, I get into your face and hit you with the million Divine Smites, right? So, yeah, that's it. Channel Divinity, similar to Clerics, they can use their Channel Divinities to replenish some spell slots, first level spell slots. Now, unlike Clerics who gain 2 or even at 18th level 3 Channel Divinities per short rest, Paladins only really have 1 from level 2, 3, whatever, and then up all the way up to level 20. So, in a way, this feature is less potent on Paladins than on Clerics. But on the other hand, Divine Smite, right? So even one first level slot, if you crit, and you just so happen to have it because you use your Channel Divinity to, you know, give yourself one more first level slot, might mean a difference between killing a monster who is about to TPK you and the rest of the party and surviving. Who knows? I mean, its edge case is very, very theoretically far-fetched scenario, but it's possible, right? So I don't think it's necessarily bad to have this option. In terms of Ranger, definitely, there's no surprise that Rangers got the most variants and enhancements. Most of these are better than the ones we have in PHB, at least in my opinion. So let's just try to quickly go over each and every one of them. So, right off the bat, we have the replacement for Natural Explorer, which most people agree is way too situational. And depends on the type of terrain that you choose, and then your DM sends you in a different type of terrain, and then you are an expert explorer of Arctic coast or let's say mountains, but the entirety of the campaign gets spent in forest and Underdark, so you're kind of screwed. Like you can't do anything with this. So Deft Explorer definitely, compared to this highly situational feature that we have in PHB Player's Handbook Ranger, definitely this feature provides more useful, more consistent, more widely useful options. By level 10 you basically get all 3 of these benefits, because you learn one at level 1, one at level 6, and then one at level 10. But there is some sense in terms of which one you take first. Now, Kenny gives you proficiency and expertise in one additional skill, on top of the ones you already have, as well as 2 more languages. Now, there are a lot of good skills to choose from. You can never go wrong by just auto-picking Perception, right? But, you know, I don't necessarily think this should be a first level pick, even though I don't think you can go wrong with it. Rowing significantly improves your mobility on different types of terrain. I would pick it in exploration and water-based campaigns. Maybe first, if your DM tells you like the entirety of this campaign is gonna be you just sailing on pirate ships, fighting pirates. Yeah, so rowing might actually be useful, you know, swimming speed, so it's always good in those types of campaigns. Otherwise, you can definitely leave it for the end. I don't think you can necessarily, you know, benefit from this if you're not gonna be in terrains which are gonna call for climbing and swimming speed. Now, Tireless is low-key insane. Most DMs use the skip long rest, get 1 point of exhaustion rule. It's been officially made an optional variant rule, whatever you call it, in Xanatar's Guide to Everything. There is, to my knowledge, no official rule that says something bad happens if you skip long rest. There is sleep deprivation rules and all of that stuff, but you know, without going too deep into the coffee locking, you know, Sorcerer Warlock using the Tome of the, you know, Pact of Tome invocation, which lets you not sleep, and maybe some character, you know, maybe Warforged doesn't sleep as well. So, without going too deep into that, let's just focus on the fact that whenever you finish a short rest, your exhaustion level, if any, is decreased by 1. So, even if your DM is not using the skip long rest, get 1 point of exhaustion rule, or some variation of it, you know, punishing you for not taking a long rest, dipping just 1 level into Ranger and then picking this benefit at level 1 of your ranger makes a lot of classes and builds much more viable at way lower levels. First to mind, obviously, Coffee Locks. If you dip into one level of ranger and your DM allows you to use this, you don't really care about skipping long rests when you can just spend one short rest and cancel out your exhaustion that you got from the skipped long rest. And obviously Berserker Barbarian is another class that comes to mind, because whenever you use Frenzy, right, you automatically gain 1 point of exhaustion, which, as most of us, I think all of us know at this point, exhaustion is really bad. Even one level is really bad. So, yeah, I mean, this is low-key insane, as I said in the beginning of me talking about this feature. So, in my opinion, you should kind of take this, right? Temporary hit points, not something that's gonna matter that much, but it's definitely something that will matter at lower levels, right? Just being able to give yourself a little bit more hit points. The exhaustion is just, it makes dipping one level into Ranger, as I said, way more viable. And makes the level 1 Ranger dip with Unearthed Arcana definitely a choice for some classes, Berserkers, Coffee Locks, and all the other concepts. Now, Favored Foe pretty much replaces Favored Enemies, so just a little bit of wordplay there. I think it's better, right? Instead of highly situational and often useless Favored Enemies, similar to Natural Explorer, you gain this Favored Enemy, which is like you pick aberrations and then you never fight a single aberration in the entirety of the campaign, making this feature just downright useless. Yes, you gain more uses of this feature as you level up, but there are so many creature types in the game, and it pretty much calls for you talking to your DM, trying to squeeze some information from the DM that's gonna help you decide whether you need to pick Fae, Fiends, Giants, Monstrosities, like who knows, right? Who knows what monsters you might be fighting. Obviously, if you're playing Storm King's Thunder, picking Giants might not be a bad choice, but honestly, spoiler alert, I've played through that campaign. We did fight Giants, but it's not been for the majority of the campaign. Now, we did end it before the end of the campaign. I think we got to level 7 or 8. But for the majority of the campaign, combat encounters weren't with Giants. We fought Fiends, Humanoids, Beasts, Monsters. I think we even fought Constructs, if I'm not mistaken. Plants, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, like, we fought everything but Giants. We fought Giants like once or twice, and that's it. So, yeah, even in like heavily themed campaigns like Storm King's Thunder now, my DM did homebrew a lot of stuff and adjust the campaign in ways that he saw fitting. So we didn't really play everything out of the book, but yeah, I mean, Giants weren't really a thing, even though it's supposed to be about Giants. But maybe it's just, you know, the second part of the campaign which we never got to. We finished before we got to that point. Anyway, I'm rambling, as I'm usually doing, and but I'm not gonna try to make this video again, so let's get back to the topic of this video, which is Favored Foe. Hunter's Mark is obviously a spell that most rangers take. All rangers pretty much take this spell, they learn it anyway. So gaining this spell from level 1, even before you gain your spellcasting feature, and being able to cast it without spending slots, I mean, at level 1 you don't even have slots. It's up to your wisdom modifier is definitely good. I mean, it gives you one more spell. Rangers do struggle with the amount of spells now, only 11, and not spending one of the rare few slots that you have access to. And on top of that, you don't even have to concentrate. It's written somewhere in there, I can't find it. Yeah, requiring no concentration. So this is really good. I mean, Hunter's Mark has been stated to be one of those spells, kind of, a lot of people claim that it's almost a class feature, because almost no ranger ever plays a ranger without knowing this spell. So why even make it an option of not taking it when pretty much everybody takes it? So let's just I think Wizards of the Coast thought that, you know, let's just make this spell something that everybody has. You know, they all have this spell. Let's not even bother with them having to learn it. allowing them basically one more spell known. They can concentrate on other spell while having this spell active. They still have a little bit more damage, and I think it's good. I think it's a step in the right direction. Definitely way more useful than the highly situational favored enemy. And before I delve into the digressions and all, talking about random stuff like Storm King's Thunder, yeah, I mean that's pretty much the way I see it. Fighting style options, Rangers are martials, so they gain a special type of fighting style as well. Druidic Warrior, I mean, learning 2 cantrips out of Druid is pretty much the same thing as Paladins learning 2 cantrips out of Cleric. Kind of like there's a parallel, there's a similarity there. I mean, Rangers are kind of half-casting Druids in a sense, while Paladins are half-casting Clerics. It's not really that, but like in a rough estimation, we can kind of paint a picture of them being so. So of course they get to swap around those cantrips as well, similar to Clerics, Druids, Paladins. I think it makes sense. I mean, it's not something that I see most Rangers taking. I still see Archery fighting style as the best fighting style, even for Rangers, but it's definitely something that's gonna allow you to have a little bit more spellcasting capability instead of just relying on martial features. Now, Ranger spells, notable additions, Aid, right? So, Clerics... Okay, so a lot of spells on this list are basically stolen from Clerics, Paladins, and Druids, even Wizards' list of spells. Rangers really have the, to my knowledge, maybe I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have the least amount of like class-specific, class-exclusive spells. Paladins have a lot of class-exclusive, Paladin-only spells. Rangers do have a little bit, but they don't really have that many, and their list of spells is shorter than the list of Paladin spells. So at least expanding the list of spells is a step in a good direction, I think. And some of these spells are really good additions. Aid is always good. More hit points. I mean, hit points are pretty much the most often number that's challenged on your sheet, and it's the number that the DMs challenge the most often. Entangle makes a lot of sense when Hunter's Mark, for example, is no longer a concentration spell because, as we've just seen, favored foe. Magic Weapon is kind of good because, you know, compared to fighters, which have a lot of attacks starting from level 11 and then they have like a 4th attack at level 20, means an action surge obviously gives them even more attacks in a first round of combat or whatever round they choose to use that feature. Magic Weapon definitely puts Rangers in a position where, sure, they only have a couple of attacks and they don't have action surge, but they are more accurate, right? If you stack Archery fighting style with Magic Weapon, you can definitely have way more, like, you can be more accurate compared to most fighters. Now, granted, fighters can learn this spell as well. I mean, if you multi-class, if you play Eldritch Knight and stuff like that. But most can't really. So, Rangers have often been described as worse fighters because, you know, you have a little bit of a spell casting, but it's seriously limited. And the way it's limited is because of the, you know, they can't use spellcasting foci, whatever it's pronounced. Something which has also been addressed, but more on that soon. So yeah, I think that's really, you know, I think Magic Weapon is really, really nice, well thought out mechanical addition. Everybody gets Revivify, so why not give it to Rangers as well? And Greater Restoration, in my opinion, should have been a Ranger spell from the very beginning. I mean, Rangers are pretty much half druids, right? Martial druids. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to have this spell. Spell versatility, obviously, being able to swap spells on long rests, is a very good thing, especially for Rangers, because if any class was in a desperate need for a feature like this, you know, knowing only a select few spells, only 11 spells at level 20, you know, gaining even more spells now with this Unearthed Arcana, you need something in order to actually ever be able to use all of these awesome options that you would now have at your disposal. And it would be a crime to definitely would be a crime to leave them hanging while everybody else gets to swap their spells and cantrips willy-nilly. Now, spellcasting focus is something that's been really missing from the Rangers list of features. It literally makes no sense why paladins as sort of martial clerics, you know, charisma-based clerics, whatever you want. There's similarities between the two of them. They share a lot of spells. Even now, they share even more spells. There's quite a bit of overlap, and there's the lines are blurry between the two classes. So there's no reason why Rangers, when paladins can use holy symbols just the same way that clerics can use holy symbols, that Rangers cannot use druidic focuses, foci, whatever the fuck it's pronounced, for their spells. A lot of DMs do handwave spell components, but in games where those spell components are a meaningful part of casting spells, and where DMs actually pay attention to that, this is definitely going to make Rangers, spells, and spellcasting feature much more viable and flexible in combat encounters when, for example, if you opt to use a shield and a one-handed weapon. That's pretty much gonna make it more useful, because you can just opt to use staff, and then you know, staff is at the same time can serve as a quarter staff and druidic focus, you know, as a staff, you know. So I think it's good, you know. It definitely makes Rangers more viable as spellcasters and martials at the same time. Now, Primal Awareness is pretty much the same thing as Primal Awareness in terms of how it's written, right? It's only 2-letter difference, but mechanically there is a lot of difference. Because, you know, Primal Awareness is good, but it's very situational, and you having to spend a slot, which is a very valuable resource, and then not being guaranteed any beneficial information in return is definitely something that, like, it can hurt you. Especially in cases where resource management, which spell slots are one of the resources that Rangers have at their disposal, similar to all the other casters. Primal Awareness in that regard kind of is a better thing, it's a better alternative. So instead of further straining your very already strained resource that you have at your disposal, why not have more spells? Like, Rangers do, as I already said, have very little spells that they can learn. Xanatar Ranger subclasses do gain a little bit more spells, but that still doesn't make it any easier to choose amongst the core class spells, of which most of these are really not. So this feature does address this issue, at least to some extent. The spells make perfect thematic sense, but in typical gameplay scenarios, some of these are still quite situational. Detect Magic is not one of those. It's only bad because Rangers cannot cast spells as rituals, which is kind of the theme of half-casters. Paladins can't cast ritual spells either. Speak with Animals, Beast Sense, Locate Animals, and Plants, and Speak with Plants are all situational and somewhat overlap each other. I don't really see the point of having all of these spells. I mean, Beast Sense, Locate Animals, or Plants, kind of the same thing. It's not really the same thing. There's difference. There are differences in terms of how those two spells work, but even from the name you can kind of, you know, figure out, yeah, it's kind of like, it does the similar thing. So Locate Creature is good, but Locate Object, which is a level 2 spell, it can often accomplish the same goal. So I'd rather see one of these Speak with Animals, Beast Sense, Locate Animals spells exchanged for the Locate Object spell instead of the Locate Creature that you get all the way at level 13, right? And Commune with Nature is a strong pick for any level 17 Ranger, so learning it for free is even better, right? Okay, so I might be wrong now. Commune with Nature is definitely a Ranger spell, right? Yeah, it is, obviously, right? Yeah, so it makes sense for Rangers to have this spell. I mean, it's the Ranger theme to commune with the nature. So, yeah, they need this spell. Fade Away is a good replacement for Hide in Plain Sight. Hide and play sight is cool on paper. It's that typical, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger scene in the first Predator movie, where he puts a lot of mud on him and kind of masks his heat signature or whatever with cooler mud. I don't think it's really how it would work in real life, but sure, suspension of disbelief. This feature definitely allows you to do something like that. Now, mechanically, as a level 10 feature, it's seriously underwhelming and highly impractical, because who can afford to spend 1 minute just creating camouflage for yourself? You oftentimes don't have a 1 minute. You oftentimes barely have one round to do something to help yourself. So, you know, this feature allowing you to use your bonus action, which is very, very good for action economy, to turn yourself invisible, is definitely better from the get-go. And the feature doesn't specify that making an attack or casting a spell stops the invisible condition. So I presume that a level 10 ranger is free to benefit from all invisible condition benefits for the full duration of this feature, which is, you know, until the start of your next turn. And regardless of what she does during that turn, you know, probably this invisible condition should persist. Now, Ranger Companion options, this is pretty much the welcome addition to the game. There's already been, obviously, the Ranger Revised, which addressed some of the concerns and problems that the Beastmaster Ranger had, but this enhancement is more in line of what we currently have in the game, and addresses pretty much all the critical concerns and gripes people have with Beastmaster Ranger, and I share most of their opinions. Now, Beastmaster, you know, especially now that Artificer Battlesmith became official, which, you know, definitely when you compare Battlesmith to Beastmaster, Battlesmith is way, way better for the similar types of mechanics that it has. So, you know, the Iron Defender is way, way better than the Beast Companion or whatever the feature it's called. And this Unearthed Arcana addresses those concerns, problems, issues, right? First and foremost, these two beasts come with way more hit points. Their hit dice actually scale as you level up. If you remember, if you ever read through the Beast Companion feature, the beasts don't really gain more hit dice. So sure, at level 3, having 1 to 3 hit dice doesn't really matter when you yourself don't have more, but as you keep leveling up and you yourself have more hit points and more hit dice, just having more hit points, which this feature does allow you to improve your Ranger Companion with, is not enough. Your Ranger Companion is inevitably gonna get damaged. And how do you heal it? You can't. You have to wait for a long rest. And, you know, if you take a short rest and spend your own hit dice, the beast, the companion, still has like 1 to 3 hit dice that it had at level 3, all the way up to level 20. So, yeah, I mean, it's really wonky in that regard. It really doesn't scale well. It has, now if you read into this creature, it buffs the creature's saving throws. It's somewhere in there. Let me just, there we go. So attack rolls, damage rolls, as well as all saving throws. Add your proficiency bonus. You can't add proficiency bonus on something that's not there. If you check this list of beasts, there's no beast on this list, allowed list of companions, that has any saving throw proficiency. So that thing is just like, what's the point of this saving throws when none of these... Okay, sure, Almirage. I think Almirage is the only one that has. No, even the Almirage doesn't. And this is like a Tomb of Annihilation. This is a adventure-specific beast. So all of these Monster Manual and Volo's Guide to Monsters beasts, they are really like... None of them have any saving throw proficiencies. So again, what's the point? Well, I think Wizards of the Coast kind of listened to people, and they did add 3 saving throw proficiencies to these beasts, and that's a really good thing, I think. You know, it definitely allows you to use the full extent of this feature now, right? both of these options have Dark Vision, something that some of these monsters do have, but most, to my knowledge, don't. Okay, so badgers do, snakes have blind sight, but frogs, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I just happen to be clicking on these, but let's say wolf doesn't have Dark Vision. Raptors, I don't think have Dark Vision. Yeah, so a lot of these beasts, which are legit choices for your companions, don't have Dark Vision, and that's really something that hurts in the long run. So you're kind of, as you're listing through these options, you are pigeonholed into only a select few really good options, while all the other ones are really suboptimal. Sure, you can pick even them if you really wanna play a ranger that has a boar as its companion, but the boar is like less hit points, less armor class. Even though it's not a bad option, there are better options in my opinion, so it's just something that there are problems with Beastmaster Ranger, right? And yeah, this is really something that addresses it. Something that really always caught me off guard is the fact that you cannot use your action to verbally command it to take the hide action, right? So if you think about it logically, why would it be not allowed for you to issue a hide command to your beast, right? So why is that not allowed? That literally makes no sense. Well, now it does, right? So if you check these stat blocks, somewhere in here, yeah, so ready companion as a bonus action, so you don't even have to spend your action. This is your bonus action. You can command the beast to take a maul, to make it small attack or to hide, right? So you don't even have to issue an action, right? So action attack, you don't have to do it. You can use a bonus action to issue attack, basically attack action, or to hide. So yeah, I mean, it's really another good thing to have. Like, oftentimes you really want to protect the companion instead of forcing it to take more damage. And even if it does take damage and dies, which is something that really affected Beastmasters horribly so far in the game, they no longer have to endure through the series of heartbreaks every time their companion dies in combat. This feature, I mean, pretty much every time your companion dies, you can obtain another one. So good luck forming any roleplay long-term bond with your beast companion, right? Every time it gets dropped to 0 hit points, you have to find a new one. So yeah, I mean, if you think about it, just imagine having a dog, right? A combat dog or something, a combat wolf, like whatever. And then that thing dies. Then you find a new one and that thing dies. Like, wouldn't that affect the character really badly, right? I mean, just think in real life terms. I think, I don't know if you specifically listening to this video, but I would assume a lot of you have pets, right? Have dogs, cats, other types of animals. I have a turtle. So imagine bringing that thing with you and then that thing continuously keeps dying. That would that would mess with your psychology. That's just something, I don't know what Wizards of the Coast thought when they just, you know, they literally mechanically made this thing like an expendable resource. You just, like, you're some type of psychopath, sociopath that just goes through these beasts like they're nothing. That literally doesn't make sense for the theme of the character. Why would those beasts even come to you after a while when everything that happens to them is just they continuously die? Like, so I guess the word would get out that you're just bringing all these monsters, beasts to slaughter. So yeah, this definitely addresses this concern that many people have. From the roleplay perspective, if the beast has died, you can spend your level 1 slot and bring the creature back to life, which definitely will make the experience of playing something which, I don't know, maybe you have some type, obviously you have a bond with these beasts, and then, you know, you can definitely flavor it in a way that makes more sense for a character that forms such a strong bond with it, that it gets the entire concept of the subclass is made around this bond, instead of just continuously finding new ones. Bro. Okay, anyway. Rogues. Cunning action aim. From a design balance playability standpoint, most rogues suffer from 2 core issues, right? One of them is that if one of their attacks, the only one that they have if they use their attack action, misses, they are next to useless, and even if it hits, it's not guaranteed that sneak attack gets always triggered. This option minimizes both problems, mitigates some of the issues that come with these, well, I mean, signature features and, I mean, ways the class is being played, right? So buying themselves more time by using a bonus action and sacrificing all mobility for the turn, rogues can give themselves advantage. Needless to say, allowing rogues to benefit from this on-demand advantage definitely will produce many more successful sneak attacks and much less disappointment after rolling that natural 1 that you roll more often than not whenever you attack somebody, right? So this definitely, I mean, even though this is the only thing that rogues get in this Unearthed Arcana, this is something that's definitely gonna help new players and even veterans have a more pleasant experience playing the game. So yeah, that's it for rogues. Sorcerers. Now sorcerers are my favorite class, and sadly expanding on the sorcerer list of spells is not gonna address one of their core issues. It's the fact that they only know 15 spells by level 20. By comparison, paladins can easily have up to 25 spells prepared. Clerics can have like 20 plus. Yeah, clerics can have like 35 spells prepared. It's just, yeah, like when you wizards can have 25 spells prepared, right? Same. So why don't sorcerers have at least 20 spells? That really always kind of irked me a little bit. Sure, they get these meta magics and font of magic and everything. Yeah, sure, that's all very nice, but full casters, the main feature of the full casters is spell casting. They need spells, and with so many options and now even more options, it's really making it hard for sorcerers to really pick spells. It's always hard to pick spells. Now, protection from evil and good, don't get me wrong, is really good. I mean, it's one of those spells, I kind of mentioned it already at some other point earlier in this video. It's an awesome defensive option, especially for a squishy class like the Sorcerer. Vampiric Touch, I never... So, I found it weird that this is a Warlock and Wizard spell and not Sorcerer and even Bard spell. Sorcerer specifically, I mean, why would it be so hard to imagine that down the line some vampire left some traces of magic in the blood of your ancestor in some weird way? Maybe one of your ancestor was a vampire and then through some weird rituals, whatever, you ended up being a humanoid, whatever. Magic, fantasy, everything is possible, blah blah blah. So Vampiric Touch definitely makes sense in that regard, and also mechanically meshes well with the class too. Constitution saving throw is one of the saving throw proficiency that sorcerers get from the level 1, so concentration spells are immediately much better than on all other classes that don't have Constitution save proficiency. And obviously low hit points, Vampiric Touch being able to heal you definitely addresses that issue as well. Now Flame Blade competes with Shadow Blade, bonus action, both spells. Pros and cons to both. Fire damage is worse than psychic damage. Shadow Blade has psychic damage, but yeah, let me just make it like this. So there we go, Flame Blade, Shadow Blade. So Flame Blade, fire damage, obviously, Shadow Blade, psychic damage. However, the latter can give you advantage on its own, which kind of makes it better in that regard. If you're in dim light or darkness, you automatically have advantage. But Flame Blade spell versus weapon attacks, so basically Flame Blade uses your Where is it? So, got a spell attack. There we go. So melee spell attack is different than the Shadow Blade, which creates a sword. So it does have the finesse property, so means you can use it with dexterity, but this inherently makes the class that wants to use this spell, the character that wants to use this spell, more mad, multiple ability dependent, because you cannot really rely on your charisma to pull you all the way through. With Flame Blade you can, because you cast it with charisma, you use it with charisma, right? So it's better in that regard. And also 10 minute versus 1 minute duration, and better scaling with higher level slots. I mean, whenever you cast every one level slot higher, the damage increases by 1d6, while in Shadow Blade's case, every 2. So okay, second level, third level, fourth is like 3d8. Basically, every 2 level higher slot increases the damage by 1 die. So at some point, Flame Blade definitely scales better, because, you know, this one caps at 5d8, while Flame Blade caps at... Oh, maths is hard. I think it's like 10d6, right? So 10d6, like, it's always better to roll more damage dice, you know, so... Yeah, I think it's way better in that regard. It definitely scales better. Fire Shield and Flesh to Stone, like wizards, they do get those spells on their list. However, I don't think sorcerers can really afford learning them. That said, the both of them can actually be situationally very, very good. However, Demiplane and Foresight are both legitimate endgame spell choices. So, you know, I think even though if you choose to take this over some other spell, you're not gonna be sorry. Especially in campaigns where utility spells like these can really, really bring you bring you types of benefits that cannot be really quantified right off the bat, or even gauged objectively. It really depends on the type of campaign that you're playing, the types of high level threats, issues, problems, challenges you're dealing with. Obviously, Foresight is a very good combat buff. There are better higher level 9 spells for sorcerers, in my opinion, but you're not gonna go wrong with this one, definitely. I mean, it's just the benefit is very, very good. Lasts 8 hours, isn't a concentration. Can be dispelled, obviously, but at the very least you will force the enemy to waste an action and and the level 9 slot to use that. So yeah, that's it for the spells. Now, spell versatility, again, this feature's flexibility will benefit sorcerers more than most other casters that do get this type of feature, because of the fact that they do learn less spells than most other full casters learn. So, you know, being able to swap around your spells, adjust your spell list on the go as the campaign progresses is a thing that's definitely gonna benefit you if your DM allows you to use it. Now, Font of Magic options, instead of your DM hating you for blatant coffee locking, right, this enhancement gives you more mechanics that support the sorcerer's unique connection to magic. It definitely expands the type of capabilities you can do as a sorcerer without fully relying on spells and just reskinning them in ways that mechanically work the same as all the other spells that all the other classes have access to, if they can use those same spells. Empowering reserves are expensive, but at the very least you don't have to rely on your DM's goodwill to grant you advantage. You can give it to yourself on demand if you need it, if you feel like it's necessary. And I think this is a good thing to have, especially in social encounters. And even in like exploration type of scenarios when you roll a lot of, I don't know, maybe survival checks, athletic checks, and all the other ability checks that sorcerers oftentimes struggle with. So just giving yourself advantage definitely makes it easier to pass those challenges. Now, Imbuing Touch makes Sorcerer a much more appealing dip for martials, especially lower level Sorcerer, but even a single class Draconic Sorcerer would benefit from something like this because, you know, Draconic Sorcerers usually have higher armor class, so they can afford a little bit more to get into melee. They have a little bit more hit points as well. so they can afford to take a little bit more hurt, and it's definitely something that is probably gonna be the most useful for those types of sorcerers. Sorcerer's Fortitude isn't something I'd personally waste sorcery points on, but if your DM absolutely refuses not to target the squishy like yourself, your temporary hit points definitely will make you harder, even harder to take down, to knock out. So, all in all, it's okay to get these. I don't think any of these three are gonna be necessarily something that you're gonna heavily rely on, but if the time comes, if the situation calls for something like this to be used, having more options is always a good thing, right? So I think this just makes the game more interesting and refreshing, right? We already have like these classes in the game for like 5-6 years at this point, so a little bit of a refreshment is probably gonna be a welcome change if any of these features get made official in subsequent official books and releases. Now, meta magic options, elemental spell might be a bit too much. Acid balls for just 1 sorcery point when you need 2 just to give yourself a magic weapon. 2 sorcery points definitely seem more fitting for the type of flexibility and power provided by this feature. As soon as you hit level 5, get that fireball, which is right off the bat admittedly overpowered, and then on top of that being able to change the damage type of the spell to address one of the common issues that all fire-based spells have, including the fireball, which is that a lot of monsters have fire damage resistance or even immunity, and then you just don't even care about that. 1 sorcery point, that's not really that much, and then you can change it into an acid ball, thunderball, lightning. Oh, I think this should be a 2 sorcery point feature at the very least. If not even more, make it something scalable. There's already a precedent in the game. We have Twinned spell which scales with the level of the slot. So why not make this like not maybe scale with level of the slot, but scale with every 2 level of the slot. Let's say like every 3rd, 5th, 7th and 9th level slot requires 1 more sorcery point, because really I think this is overpowered. Maybe if not overpowered, definitely borderline on somewhere in that territory. Seeking spell is interesting because it ignores cover not just for spell attacks, but dex-based spells too. So 1 sorcery point again might be a bit too little for the type of benefit and power that you get from this, but I don't think it's to the extent of elemental spell. 2 might be too much for lower level spells, right? So you're pretty much never gonna use this at lower levels, why would you? So something scalable in a similar way to Twinned Elemental, something like that, based on maybe the character level, the level of the slot, every odd number of the slot of the spell level. I don't know, something like that definitely feels more fitting and appropriate for the scaling power that you get with higher level spells. Unerring spell, unerring, however it's pronounced, is low-key insane. A half-elf with Elven Accuracy feat. So, okay, let me just open it up so that we are on the same page, right? Elven Accuracy, if you don't know, basically gives you another d20 that you can roll if you already have advantage. And if you are a sorcerer, you are using charisma to make an attack or a spell. So, unerring spell. Okay, so Elven Accuracy on its own, 3d20, sure. Diminishing returns, the more d20s you roll, the less statistical significance of that benefit is. So I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. If I remember, I will link towards a blog which I often let me I maybe even have it in the history. So oh yeah, how strong is Elven Accuracy? So basically, this guy did some maths, and advantage actually provides quite a bit of a benefit, but you know, 50. So with advantage you have 80% chance, so that's a 25% boost of rolling 10 or higher. But with this quote super advantage, you only have like 91% chance, so that's like another 11%. Now 11% is meaningful, but it's less than half of what you get from just advantage. So it follows that diminishing returns principle, which says that the more stuff that you throw at something doesn't necessarily double the output, right? So yeah, that follows that logic. However, even with that in mind, you know, just combining with this Elven Accuracy, half elf or whatever elf, and just casting some spell that has the attack, whatever attack roll, right? I just can't see that combination missing the target when you effectively roll 6d20 to land a shot. On top of that, you can combine it with other meta magics for the same spell, but this would make Sorkadin's burning everything on Booming Blade, Green Flame Blade super scary in tier 3. I mean, just imagine using your action for Booming Blade, and then you roll basically 6d20 for that action. And then on top of that, you're using your bonus action, you quicken another Booming Blade, and then because of the Unearthing spell, it can be used in conjunction with a different meta magic to cast that particular spell. You can combine it with Quickened, so now you have another Booming Blade where you roll 6d20. You roll 12d20 on 2 attack rolls. That's, oh boy. Whew. I know, it's just crazy. I think, I don't know whether this would be broken, but something like this is definitely possible, and I mean, I'm sure Wizards of the Coast is aware of that type of theoretical outcome scenario, so maybe they think it's not overpowered. Sure, I mean, numbers definitely say that the more d20s you roll, the less benefit you get. You know, 25 from advantage, 11 from a third d20, probably less than 4% of the 4 d20, maybe like 1 or 2% on a fifth one, but you know, it's already 91% chance with just 3 d20. So maybe it's like 93 with 4, 95 with 5, 96, 97. That's like, you're almost guaranteed of rolling 10 or higher. That's juicy. That's super, super potent. You know, you start out basically with 50, right? 55. With advantage, you are basically around 80%, almost. And then with Elven Accuracy, 91, sort of. And you're already kind of approaching that territory, you know. If you're almost guaranteed to roll a 10 or higher, you are about to hit most anything in the game, right? Because if you bump up your ability score modifier, and obviously at higher levels your proficiency bonus increases, maybe you take the magic weapon spell, now you have even more, +1, +2, +3, so maybe you have +15, +16 to hit. That has a potential to inflate the bonuses and chances to hit monsters to some ridiculous levels. So this might, if something like this gets even made official, I think this very easily could get some changes, maybe more sorcery points, maybe some type of scaling similar to Twin Spell. You know, if you use Twin Spell with higher level spells, it requires more sorcery points. Yeah, I mean, that type of stuff. Anyway, Warlocks, spell versatility, same thing as with most other classes that gain this feature. Not as impactful on Warlocks due to low number of spell slots, but it's still a viable option when dealing with changing day-to-day circumstances. You know, again, you adjust your list of known spells based on the type of scenarios that you're dealing with at present time. So why would you have a bunch of combat spells when you know that tomorrow you have to go speak to a king? Unless, of course, you maybe want to kill the king. So maybe in that case it does make sense to have just like have a bunch of damaging and all sorts of combat-oriented spells. But you know, if you're going into the unknown, it pays off to have at least some utility. So being able to swap spells and adjust and modify your spell list on the go, definitely, it kind of makes sense for all the spellcasters, because it kind of always bugged me a little bit that casters are fixed. You know, the spell that you learn at level 1, you can never really forget it, or learn something else and forget something that you never really even use. Let's say like you're playing a campaign and you never use some spell on your list. Why wouldn't it be feasible to just logically for you to learn to just forget about that spell? Because yeah, sure, at one point you knew it, but then you just forget about it because you don't use it. So yeah, I mean, that definitely makes more thematic and mechanical sense, right? So Warlock spells, animate dead. How do I even... Okay, so animate dead basically equals short rest army of undead, right? Because of the fact that all Warlock slots are short rest, and the fact you get like 5 level 5 spells at some point. So yeah, basically at some point you would be able to amass a lot of undead skeleton zombies pretty much every day, right? So I don't know whether this is... Sure, we already have a necromancer wizard, so there is a precedent for a lot of undead minions in the game, which slow down the game significantly and cause a lot of pain to DMs and players on the table. But I mean, a lot of people play warlocks, and not a lot of people play necromancer wizards specifically. So this being a core class spell, not really sure whether that's the most prudent, sensible, wise choice. However, you know, it's been added in this Unearthed Arcana, and if you are allowed to use it, let me know how it goes. Greater invisibility will benefit many single class hexblades and any level, whatever warlock that gets 4th level spells, because obviously being invisible and still being able to cast spells, attack, and being harder to hit based on the fact that you are invisible, so all attacks against you are made with disadvantage, unless obviously the creature has some type of special sense. In most cases, greater invisibility is a very, very good combat buff. Warlocks also gain more utility with spells like Teleportation Circle, Modify Memory. I'm not gonna go too deep into these spells, just let's say that, you know, it makes sense for them to have some of these wizard toys. The level 6 spells, which are basically Mystic Arcanums, right? So at level 11 you gain 1 6th level spell from your list, level 7 at level... Basically you follow the full caster progression, but you can only learn one of these spells and you can only basically cast it once per day. So in that sense, I think basically all of these 6th level or higher spells are pretty much good thematic additions. Shape Change is a serious contender, obviously competitor with True Polymorph. I still think True Polymorph is usually better, but Shape Change definitely provides more benefits in the short term, because, you know, you can use more of your features and gear compared to True Polymorph, which pretty much just denies you the ability to do so. However, True Polymorph does last indefinitely as long as you can maintain concentration up to 1 hour, and then you're pretty much true polymorphed. You are actually polymorphed into another type of creature as long or as far as somebody dispels the spell, right? So yeah, that's just warlock spells the way I see it. Again, not gonna go too deep into these because the video would last another 3 million years, but yeah, that's it for that. Now, Eldritch Invocation options, Bond of the Talisman. Bond of the Talisman ties into the new Pact Boon option, which has been provided in this Unearthed Arcana. It's an interesting enhancement, expansion to the 3 Pact Boons that we already have in the game. It's one of those features which kind of... Okay, so no Pact Boon really scales on its own other than choosing these invocations, but Warlocks are, one of those classes that there's already kind of like a semi-precedence in the official materials for something like this to exist, for a class that gets these weird esoteric eldritch type of powers and capabilities. You know, there are those dragon mark races which have been introduced in the latest Eberron release. So yeah, dragon marks. So basically dragon marks already kind of do a little bit of that, because you can add 1d4 to some of your ability checks based on what your race is. So let's say, for example, variant half elf, you can add a d4 to your investigation and intelligence and investigation and insight, right? So there's a precedence for that. Pact of the Talisman definitely allows you to do that across the board for all ability checks that you're not proficient with. And obviously being able to give it to your party members if you choose to do so, maybe even give it to some NPC. Who knows what you might be forced or be incentivized to do based on the type of issues, challenges, problems, circumstances, scenarios that your DMs drops on your ass. Now, stacking it with Bard's Jack of all trades and Bardic Inspiration, just off the top of my head, can produce a substantial bonus to all of your non-proficient skills, and can even be used as another form of support by giving it to your party members. The exact meaning of losing this talisman isn't really clear to me. Isn't entirely clear, but I mean, we can kind of understand what it means, but it's kind of at the same time not exactly absolutely clear what it happens. So if you lose, right, what does losing mean? Does it mean that you know, it's simply not knowing the exact location of the talisman, or does it mean when neither you or the creature that you give the talisman to willingly, you know, neither of those two are in possession of the talisman? Does that mean that the talisman is lost? What is it? Like, losing the talisman, that's really vague, ambiguous. I don't really know how to interpret it. I would say personally that it's probably something like you or the character who you given this talisman to unwillingly lose possession or knowledge of the location of the talisman, something like that, but it's not really clear exactly. So I guess that will require some clarification if this ever becomes official. And a lot of these invocations actually address and work off of synergize with this Pact of the Talisman. They have it as one of the prerequisites requirements to take them. So, Bond of the Talisman's power isn't immediately obvious, but any mechanic that gives two creatures the option of instant teleportation to each other can be used to seriously change the flow of combat, not only combat encounters but also sessions and maybe even entire campaigns, depending on all sorts of variable circumstances, scenarios. So I can't really tell you how good or bad this is. It just depends on the type of campaign that you're playing in, and even if you ever reach level 12 with your Warlock, right? So that's it for that. Chain Master's Fury is questionable as a mechanic. I personally think at level 9 you're usually dealing with monsters that can one-hit all of your familiars, including even the special ones that you get with the Pact of the Chain. So giving your familiars bonus action attacks only really effectively shortens their lifespan, because you give more incentive to the DM and the monsters to actually attack the familiars instead of attacking you or other party members. I think personally Pact of the Chain familiars are best used as exploration and support resource aids, you know, buddies, instead of using them in combat. Sure, at lower levels they are good as a combat aid, you know, using an imp in combat can often actually deal more damage than you can deal yourself at level 3, 4, maybe even 5, but at higher levels, as you keep leveling up your own capabilities and your own hit points and your party members' hit points and the damage of the monsters that you're dealing with is just way too much to... I think this is not a good invocation. I think this is a trap option. Now, let me know in the comments down below if you disagree with me. I'm open to changing my mind, you know. I don't know. I don't always claim to be right, and oftentimes I make mistakes, so we're all humans. Let me know your experiences. Maybe you played some campaign where you tuned your Pact of the Chain familiar to some extent, where it dealt more damage than even like the fighter with sharpshooter feet. I don't know whether if something like that is if something like that is even possible. I'm twisting my tongue at this point. This video is way too long. Let's try to finish it. So yeah, best use is exploration and support 8. Anyway, Eldritch Armor is basically plate mail warlocks, right? Giving yourself plate mail proficiency, which you can do with this feature. Invocation negates the inability to cast spells due to the fact you're not proficient with the armor that you're wearing. Still, though, there is a limit of the mobility issue, right? Sorry. So if you're wearing armor, let's say you have plate mail, which requires 15 strength, and then you don't have 15 strength, right? That pretty much means that you have minus 10 to your movement speed. That might not be that bad, even if that means increasing your AC substantially. There are ways to mitigate, augment, or even improve your movement speed in other ways other than just relying on your race. So, at lower levels, not really sure whether it's that good, but at higher levels, especially if you're not a Hexblade, giving yourself medium armor proficiency, if you can snatch one of those, is definitely... I mean, it's not gonna be something that's gonna make your character super powerful, but it's definitely gonna make it way more survivable than just having like 13-14 AC. Why not have, let's say 16, maybe even 17-18, who knows, right? So yeah, I think this is a solid invocation, right? On par, maybe even better than the Shadow Armor invocation that gives you the pretty much at will mage armor. Anyway, that's it. So Eldritch Mind gives you one of the best benefits of the Warcaster feat without actually you having to take the Warcaster feat, right? So oftentimes taking feats means that your main ability score is lower than the rest of the party, and most tables play with feats. However, and most people take the feats because feats are good. However, oftentimes you really want to have the best of the both worlds, and Eldritch Mind is kind of that thing. But not only that, Warcaster only works when you take damage, right? And that's oftentimes the only thing that really challenges you to make a Constitution saving throw to maintain your concentration. However, if you have to make a Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration and you didn't take damage, this feat really doesn't work, because whatever, this is only when you take damage. So this invocation pretty much addresses that. Whenever you make a Constitution saving throw, you make it with advantage, regardless of whether you took the damage or your DM told you that, I don't know, you lost balance, you got dropped 50 feet down below, for some reason you didn't take damage, maybe there was some soft cushion down below, which made you not take any fall damage, but at the same time, it was enough to break your focus. I don't know, something happens. The DM is always in the right to tell you that you have to make a Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration. This definitely helps. Far Scribe is an awesome utility to keep in touch with NPCs you meet during the campaign. It doesn't even require too high of a level to get it. 5th level characters is something that many people get to regularly. So I think this is a very, very interesting way to mechanically, as a warlock, really, immerse yourself into whatever is happening around you with your party members, NPCs that you deal with, some, like, let's call them quest givers, important people that the DM often has you interact with, stuff like that. Gift of the Protectors is a very cool way to regularly negate knockouts of your party members without casting Death Ward spell on them. Pretty much this makes the most thematic sense for Undying Warlock, because a lot of their features do revolve around negating death. I mean, after all, they do get the Death Ward spell, and also they are a bit harder to knock out themselves. So yeah, I mean, obviously every warlock can take this, every warlock that has the Pact of the Tome, but I guess the Undying ones make the most sense. That's just my opinion. Investment of the Chain Master Best benefit is the swimming flying speed, honestly, because again, it will be a little bit of a buff for lower level chain-packed warlocks in combat, but familiars, again, don't fare well as combatants at higher levels, at least not in my opinion. So the magic attacks and higher save DCs do not really matter, because oftentimes you really want to preserve you really want to protect your familiar. You don't really care about dealing some more damage with it. So it's kind of, you know, I would probably take it because of the mobility improvements and the fact it doesn't have to breathe, but I don't know. I guess you're better off if you just skip this. These two benefits are more of a trap option than really an improvement, in my opinion. Protection of the Talisman is probably the best Talisman invocation, because saving throws become common at higher levels, and anything that improves your odds of passing them is quite useful and powerful. So let's say that you can't even play... Let's say your DM doesn't allow you to take feats. Based on my poll on the community tab on my YouTube channel, most people play with feats. There are a fair few, but there is a decent chunk of people that they only play with vanilla rules. In that case, you can't really take Warcaster, you can't even take Resilient Constitution, so you're kind of screwed in terms of even like Constitution saving throws. This paired with Eldritch Mind means that you will exclusively, specifically as a warlock, be able to maintain concentration on spells better than most other casters who don't already gain concentration through maybe sorcerers, you know, Constitution, or artificers already have also have Constitution saving throw proficiency, and also all the other saving throws that you are not proficient with. You get to roll a d4 for them. Not to mention, if you are a very high level, let's say level 6 Paladin, level 9 Warlock who gets this invocation, you have like +4 or 5 to all of your saving throws from the Aura of Protection, and then Protection of the Talisman gets additional d4 on all of your saving throws that you're not proficient with. That's just... yeah, this allows for some crazy stacking with multiclassing and character concepts that revolve around really driving those numbers up as high and as far as possible. A Rebuke of the Talisman damage is relevant on lower levels, but at higher levels, being able to push the attacker up to 10 feet with your reaction is, I think, much more important, because monsters start shredding your hit points with multi-attacks. Once that starts going on, oftentimes being able to push the monster 10 feet might actually be just enough for that monster to not have enough movement speed left to get back into range to hit you again, and then on your turn you get away from the monster, you keep running away, shooting your Eldritch Blasts, pew pew, kill, you know, all the fun stuff that happens with warlocks. Finally, we have wizards. Not a lot of things have been added. Cantrip versatility, you know, I can understand this feature on divine casters like clerics, druids and paladins who get spells from otherworldly divine sources, oftentimes gods themselves. I find it harder to justify it on casters known for reliance on their own research, on magical notes inscribed in their spellbooks that they have to use to memorize spells for the day. In fact, cantrips aren't even written in the spellbook, because if you read the Warlock's spellcasting wizard spellcasting feature, it pretty much says that cantrips are not... a spellbook doesn't contain cantrips. So how do you justify a class that really only relies on itself to find all this very hardly accessible knowledge in most cases to unlock the secrets of the magic and spells, and then it can just willy-nilly swap cantrips? I mean, sure, all the other classes get it, so why not? From the balance perspective, it makes sense, but from theme and sort of quote-end-quote logical perspective, I don't know. It's just kind of stretched out to me, and I don't really think that it's really, you know, I don't think it's necessarily the most sensical and thematically appropriate change. Anyway, Wizards list of spells is the biggest one in the game, so not expanding it at all wouldn't be any type of a crime. I don't think Wizards really even need any more options. They have so many at their disposal already. But the few spells that did get sort of suggested to be added in this Unearthed Arcana playtest makes sense from the thematic standpoint. Divination spells like Augury and Divination, funnily, you know, Divination, together with another clue-gathering spell like Speak with Dead, definitely give Wizards a wider range of useful options at lower levels. Enhance ability probably should have been a Wizard spell from the very beginning, seeing how pretty much all other full casters get this spell anyway. So why wouldn't Wizards, who are the masters of research and arcane lore and unlocking all of these secrets on their own, they are the magical geniuses. So how do they not gain this spell? It's just always kind of baffled me. Yeah, that's it for the Wizard. Now, fighting style is obviously something which I talked about several times in this video. Something that Paladins, Rangers, Fighters, pretty much any class that has fighting style options get. These are the stock expanded options that all of the fighting style, all of the classes that do have fighting style feature get, right? So blind fighting with this option, Daredevil and other popular fantasy concepts that involve characters that are blind in their, their eyesight is, they don't have the proper eyesight. Definitely something like that becomes viable. The style applies to all attack rolls, meaning that even spell attack rolls benefit from it. So it was definitely probably made with Eldritch Knights in mind. And maybe even spellcaster multiclassing with some other full caster, half caster as a fighter. And taking this style definitely will extend to spell attack rolls of that class that you multiclass into. Interception, even though this style doesn't scale into higher levels, it's objectively better than protection in my opinion. Let's just open Fighter so that we can kind of compare these, that you even know what I'm talking about. So fighting style like protection, both of them require a reaction, but protection gives you a gamble option. You pretty much impose disadvantage. Both of them require a shield. Sure, interception does require a bit more flexibility. You could be wielding a simpler martial weapon instead of just having to use a shield like protection. So even in that regard is better than protection fighting style, and it definitely guarantees the mitigation of at least a portion of the incoming damage instead of just completely relying on the luck that the protection fighting style gives. Thrown weapon fighting is a style that makes knife throwing and shuriken flinging no longer require dual wielder feat to be completely legal in terms of the system. You know, if you've been playing 5th edition for any amount of time, you would know that you can't really draw or stow two weapons using a single like object, free action object interaction type of thing, you know. So the dual wielder does allow you as a feat to draw or stow two one-handed weapons when you would normally be able to draw or stow only one. Drawing or stowing only one weapon is pretty much the general rule, and dual wielder is the exception. So now, with this fighting style, you don't really even have to go for this feat, because this fighting style would allow you to do this particular thing without obviously this feat. I'm kind of going in circles here, but I guess you know what I'm kind of talking about. So, you know, statistically, this would also make the throwable weapons more on par with the weapons that you usually hold in one of or two of your hands, because a lot of those weapons usually have like lower hit dice, so d6s, d4s compared to d8s and d10s, maybe even d12s, or maybe even 2d6 in terms of like maul and greatsword. So yeah, I mean, statistically it would put these weapons on the more even playing field compared to other weapons. make that type of character who is throwing weapons instead of just like shooting arrows from a bow or swinging his sword or maul or whatever other type of melee weapon, more viable an option in the type of system that we already have in the game. Finally, unarmed fighting, basically the mechanical approximation of what happens when a trained MMA fighter, mixed martial arts fighter, starts pummeling his or her opponent with all sorts of striking, grappling, and all sorts of other martial arts. It's not entirely clear what strike with 2 free hands really means, at least to me, in the context of the 5th edition rules. Does hitting with your offhand count as a 2-weapon fighting? Even though unarmed strikes aren't really weapons, but they are counted as weapon attacks in the context of the gamified system? Or does that mean when you get extra attack and are holding nothing in your hands that you get to deal more damage because of it? It's just like the way it's been explained. It is definitely a bit vague, if you ask me, and open to interpretation, but so are a lot of these Unearthed Arcana features. So hopefully if this gets made official, it gets clarified, addressed, modified, the text gets made a little bit more clear in ways how it works exactly when it makes into the official product. And basically that's it. The official kind of conclusion, my conclusion, would be that many versatility features seem to be aimed at new players, having an easier time with the system and not being punished for suboptimal mechanical choices that they make at level 1, 2 or 3. They also make Wizards of the Coast also kind of made it easier for veteran players who are using these Unearthed Arcana options to steer off of the beaten path and try out different features and spells more freely, aware that they can revert back to their default picks, best picks, quotation marks, if they don't like the feel of the spells and features that they don't usually go for. Ranger and Warlock definitely got the most new toys, because their power does lag a big bit behind other classes, especially at higher levels. The lines got a bit blurry between many casters. A lot of best Paladin spells got distributed to bards, clerics and druids, even rangers. More classes have access to healing and reviving spells sooner into their progression. And most core class spell lists got more AoE, area of effect, damage options. Even half-casters have more AoE damage spells. With these changes, the meta would definitely shift in the direction where parties could do more healing and dump more damage when necessary, requiring DMs to drop progressively tougher monsters and other tougher challenges to even be able to, well, challenge their party, right? With massive core changes and overhaul of the class system like this, we actually might be legit speeding towards something of sorts of a D&D 5.5 edition, because this is actually extensively changing, enhancing, replacing a lot of core features that a lot of classes are known for already in the game. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, you know. A lot of things that we have in the game are subpar. I mean, let's not even talk again about the Ranger's Companion, which is ridiculously bad and trash. So yeah, I mean, I think the game is actually ripe for something like that. And yeah, basically, if you liked my video, if you somehow survived through these 2 hours and 13 minutes and whatever amount of time is left over in this video, hit the like button. I mean, I've actually legit spoke for 2 hours and 13 seconds without stopping. My throat is completely busted. I probably won't be able to DM a session tomorrow. So the least you can do for me is hit that like button, subscribe and hit the notification to get notified of all of my future video uploads. If you want to watch more videos on my channel, there's plenty of the Unearthed Arcana reviews, overviews. I make custom builds, multi-class, usually some single classes, and a couple of rants and all of that stuff. So definitely check out all of my other videos. And again, subscribe, hit the notification bell, tell your friends and family, your dogs, cats, and whoever is interested in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, playing the game at a level that's a little bit above the sort of like the base level that you get by just reading the surface. Benefits and features that you get from all these classes and spells, but actually, you know, making characters that are a little bit more specialized, competent, you know, a little bit better at the stuff that they are supposed to do. That's sort of the main focus on my channel. Not always, obviously, with videos like these, I go a little bit more into just the general mechanics of the system. But yeah, obviously with the name, with the channel name like MinMax Munchkin, I mean, you kind of know what you're getting. So yeah, once again, like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell button, go ahead and watch all of my other videos. I would also invite you once again to consider chucking a buck my way, at the very least, if you think I'm worth the trouble. I think speaking for 2 hours and 15 minutes definitely constitutes some sort of value. At the very least, I hope you got entertained listening to me fumbling through very, very Russian Slav accent and very broken English. And Magical Secrets as a tier is obviously always there if you want to a little bit more convenience downloading all of these materials and scripts I use when explaining these. Oftentimes, maybe some more complex character concepts and builds. It's not mandatory. It's all optional. Everything I talk about is freely accessible if you just watch my videos. And once again, throughout the whole December, there's going to be a 25% discount on my Melendor Chronicles: The Undoing of Oideron homebrew campaign. So if you want to play a weekly campaign with me as a DM, definitely sign up for a waitlist, because I do have to address the schedule. You know, I know most of you work, have families, other duties. Your schedules are busy, so is mine. So let's try to get something out of this. If you're interested, the link is down in the description below this video. That said, as you can see, I'm getting new comments, so I have to go address that. MinMax Munchkin out. Talk to you soon.